That little ditty we used to torment our teachers with when we were kids goes something like this. Onward, upward, Mary had a go. Day by day she tied it to a rope, till at length they got busty rope, and Miss Mary had to run behind it. We had a lot of fun with that, but do you actually know how beautiful these words are? Here's the Song of Guyana's Children by W. Hawley Bryant. Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea, so like the mountains, the sea and the river, great, wide and deep in our lives would we be. Onward, upward may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be. In the land of Kaijur, shining splendor, land of the palm tree, the croton and fern, we would possess all the virtues and graces, we all the glory of goodness would learn. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be. Born in the land where men sought El Dorado, land of the diamond and bright shining gold, we would build up by our faith, love and labor God's golden city which never grows old. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be. Ready? Happy Independence Day, Guyana!
She put a pot on she hair and gone. Them a the first one out on the dam. Basket on she head, bucket in each hand. Hold up on she frock, I wanna she grandson. To the market, them a go. For the morning, the day is dawning. For cockacrow to give the villagers a warning. Rise and shine, the birds them a sing. All animal take turn as them join in the waking. Cock-a-crow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even duck a quack. Cock-a-crow, dagabag, donkey, bray, horse, and they even.
All right. Good evening. It's 7:04. It's not a time that you guys are accustomed seeing me, but it's Saturday, and this is a special interview with the Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Geeta Chandan. is going to be with us shortly. Gives you time to share the link, and we have some very interesting information. And I got some questions to ask the Shadow Minister of Home Affairs. For some of you, it's pretty obvious. I know a lot of you got it because we have a lot of smart people who are watching and listening this show via the Facebook, social media, whether it is YouTube. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And those of you who are listening via Benjop Radio on the ground, good evening to all of you. And I know in all across Guyana, that it's not a beautiful evening. Maybe it's a beautiful evening for some who have pending matters before the court. And I can understand the smiles on some of your faces, especially those who have cases in front of the Georgetown Magistrate's Court or wherever else. If I had cases there, and I've had many cases there, I probably would have been smiling because of the fact that the evidence and whatever evidence or whatever and documents are damaged. But we've got to go beyond that. This is a sad situation indeed, sad because of the recklessness of, and I say recklessness for many reasons. As you would know, back in 2013 or sometime back then, that the police station, just the lockups section, was actually billed at $50 million to repair. $50 million to repair. In fact, we do have our guest. I'm told by our assistant producer, and to let you guys know that Lemon is no longer, he does operation at Benjop Radio, but he has been promoted to assistant producer. So he has indicated to me that our guest, Miss Geeta Chandan, is with us, and it's always a pleasure to have her. Good evening to all of you guys again. As I was saying, $50 million just for the lockups. $50 million. Look at it. $50 million. And I remember, I know those beds. They're very thin. They had no mattress. They had absolutely nothing. That, what do you call it? Potty or whatever, it doesn't work. So whenever stuff happens in there, it all piles up. And Freddie Kissoon can attest to that, because there has been a lot of piling up whilst he was in there. I had to ask him questions. Freddie, are you okay? You're piling things up in here, man. Remember, we're human beings, and you shouldn't be piling things up like that. All right, just a little humor, because that Brickdam lockups brings back some memories indeed. And not so good memories at all. I see people are congratulating Lemon for his promotion. He's been doing a heck of a good job. And so we give him an opportunity to be assistant producer. It doesn't come with a raise. It does more money, but more responsibility on the job at 107.1 FM. Look who we have today, the Honorable Geeta Chandan-Edmond. How can I forget the last name, Edmond? Good evening to you, Madam MP. Good to see you.
Good evening, Mark. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. It's always a pleasure to interact with you. It's always a pleasure to be in your company.
Thank you so much.
You would have enjoyed my company.
I always do that, and I was just about to, whilst I thank people for sharing the link, I know it's kind of like a surprise for all of our listeners that I'm on at this time, but this is just a special program where we are interviewing the Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Geeta Chandan-Edmond. She is, of course, representing the coalition APNU-AFC in Parliament. And Ms. Geeta Chandan-Edmond should be no stranger for some of you who would have passed through Brickdam lockups or would have been issued a summons or whatever. She is, of course, a former magistrate, and she was a very serious magistrate. In fact, we go way back when I first, my first interaction with her I was standing in front of her courtroom, and she had a very, very serious face. I thought that I would have been myself, and well, the first case she dealt with, the Honorable MP, dealt with was when I was charged for having an illegal radio station. They never had any evidence. The matter was thrown out because, as the magistrate, Geeta Chandan-Edmond, didn't find that there was much of a case or anything at all. So she dismissed the matter. So yes, we do have a history of being in front of each other. That was many years ago. It was back in 2010 for that illegal radio station. Now here you are with me on a legal radio station, 107.1 FM.
All right, good to hear. Good evening, Mark. Good to
hear.
How
have you been? How have you been?
Good. I've been good. Life has been good to me. My children are progressing very well. And I'm at a happy place. But not at a happy place politically, but personally, I am at a happy place.
All right. I'm glad that you are at a happy place. You have some beautiful children, and I'm sure that they are as smart as their
parents.
Their parents.
Because their dad would want to definitely take credit.
I didn't want to because, Joel, Edmond, and I go way back since we were little kids, pitching marbles and so forth. Please give him my regards.
I certainly will.
Moving on now, what's the situation before we go to all these big problems happening in the country? Not to say that COVID-19 isn't. It is a very, very big problem. What's happening with that? COVID-19, all these deaths.
Thanks for that question, Mark. I think firstly, I'll start off with that there is some sort of misconception that the opposition has an anti-vaccination stance, but nothing could be further from the truth. I am vaccinated. My entire family is vaccinated. My extended family are. My closest friends are vaccinated, and most of the opposition members are vaccinated. And we've been public with this. I am pro-vaccine. The opposition is pro-vaccine. I understand the concerns and the hesitancy of vaccination. I've had those concerns. But I did my independent research. I consulted with doctors. I spoke at length with my brother, who is a doctor. And from my research, Mark, I found that the vaccines are safe, and I encourage all persons to be vaccinated. We have to take steps to protect our family, our community, our society. And in addition to the vaccine, you have to have a healthy lifestyle, healthy diet, and you have to practice the protocols and guidelines. I am particularly pleased to see leaders in community encouraging persons on vaccination. This is what Prime Minister in Jamaica is doing. He's out in his community, he's educating his people. And Mark, with this sort of approach, you'll have less hesitancy, less resistance. We live in a society of misinformation, fake news. There's a lot of distrust, mistrust, and we should not take the high-handed approach. There must be stern and stringent implementation of all COVID measures. But Mark, we know what are the stats. We know what is in the public domain. We on the opposition side, we are not privy to any sort of insider information. What is in the public domain is what we are privy to. We know that there is mismanagement. We know that there is mishandling of the pandemic. And the opposition has called publicly for the Minister of Health to step down. Clearly, the COVID situation is out of control. And we have called for there to be a bipartisan approach. I mean, Mark, when this government was sworn in, they inherited an effective COVID-19 plan that was in place by the coalition government. And we know the concerns are real. Guyana is now classified with a tier 4. And we all know what that means. And we've been public with these calls. We're saying, Minister Frank Anthony, you need to step aside. You simply cannot provide us with the answers that are necessary. And we've asked publicly some questions on behalf of the constituency which we represent. So I will encourage persons, take the vaccine, protect yourself. I mean, I understand that you have your right and that has to be balanced, but in exercising your right, you need to be fully informed. And that is where I find there is a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of There's a lot of hesitancy because of the approach the government has taken.
I'm glad that Ms. Madam MP, I'm glad that you've mentioned that the opposition, the coalition, they are not anti-vaccine. And I haven't heard any one of your colleagues or even the leader of the opposition come on to say that they are against the vaccination. Certainly not. In fact, Mr. Joe Harmon, the leader of the opposition, said that he has been vaccinated and he took the Sputnik V. I do recall that. I'm glad that you are also vaccinated and your entire family. It is your choice. You thought that it's the safe way. And I also do believe that because I am fully vaccinated as well. But I also understand the hesitance by some people. It is because of the mixed messages the regime has been sending to citizens, especially with the Sputnik V. People are not certain where exactly the Sputnik V came from. We know that it's through a middleman. We are not certain. The people are not certain that it is the real deal. Do you think that has a lot to do with the hesitancy of a lot of citizens right now?
Precisely, Mark. I mean, we've called for the suspension of the Sputnik V, and those were based on valid claims. I mean, we now see that those claims have been vindicated. WHO has clearly said what is their position, and we know persons who have taken this vaccine would not be able to travel, like certain countries like the US, Canada, Barbados, I think Trinidad also. And in addition to those questions which the leader of the opposition has asked, there are several other questions that are still lingering on the minds of citizens. I mean, we've been hearing that there are variants of COVID-19 in Guyana. We want to know more about these variants. What is the infection rate? I mean, you're starving us, Mark, as a people by just providing us with the basic stats that is out there. We want to know about children, how many persons have been affected. We want to know how many persons per region have benefited from the AstraZeneca and all the other vaccines that are available. Is there a sort of register which would register the adverse effects from the vaccine? If persons with underlying conditions, they're given that exemption certificate. We want to know the situation at the infectious hospital. How many personnel are there? How many persons are trained? What about the machines and the equipment there? So there is clearly a need for a national multi-stakeholder approach. And that would really help us to go a very far way.
Really help us to go very far away. I know you are the Shadow Minister of Home Affairs. We'll get to those questions. But it seems as though whilst your brother was hitting the medical books, you were listening to him and reading into him. You seem to have so much knowledge on medicine as well, but you are more knowledgeable on the issue, on the topic of law and order as well. But before we get into those questions, can you describe for our listeners and viewers exactly when they say you are Shadow Minister of Home Affairs? Explain your duties as Shadow Minister of Home Affairs.
Okay, as the Member of Parliament who is responsible for security, I cover all things that's related to public security. I'm not responsible for the army, so the everything that Mr. Ben is responsible for, I'm responsible to shadow him as per se, and to portray what is our alternative in relation to the policies that he would advocate. So this includes the Guyana Police Force, the fire service, the prison, anything that deals with national security, Mark.
Just a little bit of humor. You are shadowing this guy. It seems as though it's not difficult to shadow him whilst he's fast asleep. Fast asleep on the job. Crime is on the increase throughout the country. They just do not want to accept that. We see the return of extra judicial killings, execution style killings. All these things we are seeing have returned. Now let's begin with the fire at Brickdam Police Station today. Gutted almost the entire. There's still one small, probably portion that is still standing there. But what is your take on this fire and especially since the damaging of, scores of documents and evidence were damaged. Your take as a former
Okay.
magistrate and shadow minister of Home Affairs.
All right, to answer that question, Mark, what we saw today is a manifestation of the incompetence, inefficiency, ineptitude of the minister with responsibility for this sector. And what I can clearly say without a shadow of doubt is that the poor leadership of the PPP continues. My prayers and thoughts are with those who were affected with this devastating fire today at the Brickdam Police Station. I mean, Mark, this fire has destroyed property, vital records in its aftermath, equipment, vehicles. The loss is unimaginable. Exhibit statements, the loss is simply unimaginable. I'm reassured up to about an hour or so ago that all reports indicate that there was no loss of life. And today is just a cloud of misfortune that has hovered over this country. And Mark, the denial of the will of the people has certainly cast a dark shadow over our beloved nation. On the heels of the death and the destruction of COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to see a nation in rapid decline with nothing auspicious to show. The fire today clearly represents, Mark, another manifestation of the confusion, the incompetence which has been brought forward by the current government. We're witnessing the incompetence of the PPP in real time. The implication for national security will be devastating. Citizens will be going to bed with lots of uncertainty as the main station within this district is destroyed. There'll be lots of skepticism in the hearts of people, and this is more so against the backdrop, against rising crime levels within the country, which from all appearances seem to be out of control, and there seems to be no discernible strategy from the Minister of Home Affairs and by extension the government on how they plan to de-escalate crime. The leader of the opposition in a statement today made certain calls, and I wish to reiterate some of those calls. That's the calls of the APNU AFC, and I believe in those calls also. There should be the immediate resignation of the Minister of Home Affairs, the initiation of an immediate impartial investigation into the causes, the circumstances of this fire, the establishment of a mechanism to examine all aspects related to fire safety and review existing systems, including building codes. We've had a whole lot of fires in the shortest period of time. We've experienced fires at Sharon Building, at the multilateral school. So there need to be an immediate assessment of all the response mechanisms, as well as a review of the available equipment and human resource capacity. This investigative mechanism must provide a comprehensive report, and the findings must be made public for public scrutiny and immediate remedial action. I think also there should be a review of the Fire Service Act. We need to be provided with recommendations for modifications at the parliamentary level. And Guyana is moving towards an environment of transformation. So there's need for new, comprehensive, and creative legislation that must be introduced in relation to fire prevention and the safety of all Guyanese. There's also the need for the government to commence the digitization of records, which commenced under the APNU AFC administration. We also need to look at our disaster preparedness plans and strategy. The minister also need, Mark, to look at international best practices, look at what happens globally. This is not the first time that a station is destroyed. Stations have been destroyed either by fire or natural causes. So you have to look at what exists internationally, formulate your policy, look at the recommendations that were contained in the 2016 COI report into the disturbances, the fire, and the resultant deaths of prisoners at Camp Street, and implement those recommendations. Also take whatever is your policy to cabinet for approval. And I think they should be meeting right now. I don't think they deserve a weekend break or so to, discern what are their next steps. And like I've said to you, these calls are consistent. That was made by the opposition leader today in a statement. And if you'll permit me to mark, today we saw utter chaos, utter confusion. I followed the live stream as I monitored this devastating situation. And clearly, there was no muster point. I saw sheer chaos and panic. I was optimistic, like most Guyanese. I was hopeful that with a fire station in close proximity to the police station, that the station would have been safe, that the devastation wouldn't have been great or in that magnitude as we have witnessed. But I don't want to make any sort of premature pronouncements. You know my background, I'm fact based, I'm evidence based. So, in the absence of any sort of official report, hopefully that report will answer all our questions. But it hasn't escaped me that we have seen numerous mysterious fires in the short period of time.
Oh yes, the Mabura, I believe, Mabaruma, secondary school was recently gutted. Immediately after that, the fire chief said it was arson. Then I believe that there's a section of the Vigilance Police Station. They said it was arson. Then it was the multilateral school, I believe, North Multilateral School, North Rumvelt, completely gutted. Other places, of course, and now the Brickdam Police Station. I don't know. You spoke of all these things, modernization of the police, the entire police system, the police force, rehabilitation of police stations, and so forth. You said that the digitization of the records started under the coalition. But all these things that you're talking about, I know for the most part, or if not for all, they were neglected under the 23 years of the PPP's rulership. 5 years is just a small amount of years, 2 of which you guys were basically battling the betrayal by that individual. Now, and lots of other things you guys had to do to mop up and to repair the country. But as it pertains to the police force and police reforms and so forth, do you believe that your government, the coalition government, did a lot in those areas?
Certainly, Mark, we did a whole lot. We commissioned a entire security sector reform report in relation to security. So what the government has to do is just to build on what we have left. There is the Russell Combs Security Sector Reform Report. Implement those measures. So I believe we've done a whole lot, Mark. I mean, I've spoke at length about this in my budget presentation. I spoke about all of our achievements, which was I don't want to sound repetitive. I've spoken about this very publicly.
Yes, I do know that you have during your budget debate. And just to remind our listeners, or maybe some of the folks who may be hearing this for the first time, in terms of the budget allocated for the security sector. We know that the Ministry of Education got
what's that? Sorry.
We know that the Ministry of Education got $25 billion, but what about the police force?
The security sector had a very, very substantial amount allocated, but we haven't seen any justification as to how these monies have been spent or are to be spent. And similarly, in relation to the health sector, significant portions have been allocated, but we aren't seeing any sort of plan or justification. In relation to some of our achievements, we've restored the Guyana Police Force to being a professional institution. And we know what exists right now. There is a need, Mark. There is a need for a professional institution. We can't have political persons inserting themselves into investigations. We have to free the force of any sort of directive. We've also established a command center and smart city, and this is supposed to monitor criminals, suspects, vehicles involved in crime. And notably, Mark, we've ended state-sponsored execution. We ended the domination of drug empire, and we place public security as a top priority. And even in opposition, we will continue to do so. And like I've said publicly in all of my statements, we are extremely concerned about the deteriorating security situations. And we've called and we continue to call on the government, make the necessary decisions, take the necessary steps, assuage us as a nation, and put measures in place to protect all of us, to ensure that the society is safe and citizens are kept safe. Public security, public safety must be a primary concern for this government. Mark, we simply can't revert back to the dark age era.
We just simply can't, and we all know the dark years era quite too well. During your time as a magistrate, sitting on the bench, your courtroom was in a horrible state, horrible condition. Probably when it rains, and then the noise and all these different things. So these complaints have been going on for years upon years. Sloppy police work, evidence missing, documents missing, and so forth. I say all of this before I get into my next question. A lot of people, Madam MP, don't know that you are a victim, because who knows, maybe you could have been sitting there as a judge today, but you are a victim of the PPP.
I believe in destiny. This is where I'm supposed to be. I've had
Yeah,
10 glorious days.
you were pulled off the bench as a result of vindictiveness and spite. You want to spend a couple minutes talking about that and how that made you feel today, how that made you into the politician you are today?
I saw it as it's public knowledge what happened in 2015, February the 20th. So I don't want to spend time rehashing that and make this interview about me as a person. This should be about what is happening right now in the country. I've had 10 glorious years on the bench, and I've served my time very well. If you ask me if I can sleep at nights, yes, I can. I've been very fair. I've been very objective. Magistrates are creature of statute and law, and at all times I've followed whatever the law dictates, and I based my judgment on that. And I've at all times been very, very fair. What has happened is very unfortunate, but I saw it as a continuation to fight for what I believe in. I believe in a society where there's fairness, there is non-discrimination, etc. But what has happened in 2015 has just made me into a stronger person. And I just saw this as a continuation of what I believe in, a continuation of my service to my nation.
And thank you so much for your service to your nation. New in the political arena, I know sometimes you're a bit shy, a little bit camera shy, but in the courtroom, you're not shy at all. Let me ask you a quick question before we move on to other issues pertaining to crimes. At any point in time, because I know, and I'm speaking specifically of the matters you've had to deal with, myself, Lincoln Lewis, here we are coming out of Brickdam Police Station lockups after spending 3 long nights, and then we were on our way to appear in front of court. We subsequently appeared in front of you, and then there was another time that I appeared in front of you two, like I've indicated earlier, for a silly matter about some illegal radio station. Do you believe that you were being pressured by the powers, the political powers at that time, to be harsh towards people like us? Were you at any time pressured, or any phone calls made to do the obvious, which was to send us to jail?
Mark, with my sort of upbringing, you're immune to any sort of external influence and pressure. I mean, I was brought up in a home where the mother and father, they're both very strict. They're still very integral in my life. And my father has always said you need to be fair, and there will be consequences to some of the decisions that you will take. But in life, you have to own up to your decisions. And at the end of the day, you will have to be able to live with the decisions you have taken.
And I thank you so much. I would take from that you were never pressured. I know there were some magistrates who were pressured.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that with my sort of upbringing, you know how to deal with external pressure and influences. That's all I'm saying.
And that's all you'll say.
That's all I will say.
Okay, I just should let you know that I wasn't afraid whether you sent us to prison or not. But Lincoln
Well, you
Lewis,
should have had faith in me. I think I've lived by my standards and the ideals that I believe in, and I think I've earned a reputation of being a very fair person. I mean,
I
some
can I,
might
I can
think I
attest.
was harsh,
Yeah.
but I
I
don't
can,
think I was harsh. I did apply the facts to the law.
and even after dealing with my case, that illegal radio station stuff, the storage of my equipment to this day, they can't find it. I don't know if it's at the magistracy a storage room or the Brickdam Police Station. Nobody can find it. Maybe it got burnt up now. But this leads me to my next question. The documents are now burnt. The police files and all these things, evidence. Explain what happens now with people who have cases and all the evidence and documents burnt.
Okay, I listened to the press conference that was hosted by the Ministry of Home Affairs. I've listened to some of the utterances by Minister Ben, specifically in relation to the reconstruction of documents. And I found his statement to be a naive one and a very dangerous one. In relation to the reconstruction of documents, Mark, there are certain legal steps, avenues, mechanisms that um, have to be followed before statements can be reconstructed. I mean, if a source document is destroyed, you understand the implication of successfully prosecuting a defendant. I think lawyers will have a field day there. So I feel Mr. Ben should not be making sweeping, outlandish statements, especially in areas where he is not learned. Leave that to his colleagues, maybe the Attorney General, who has more knowledge in this area. But what we've seen today, Mark, is a manifestation, a failure in the leadership, and I think the nation would be reassured somewhat with the immediate resignation of Robson Ben. We've seen him inserting himself into investigation. We've seen him inserting himself at the riot at Lusignan prison, which resulted in the death of two prisoners. And I'm sure you're aware that I've tabled a motion in this regard. And he has inserted himself into a very hostile, a very volatile hostage situation where he's untrained, and we all know that he's the one with responsibility to ensure that there is peace and order, there's maintenance of peace, there's safety throughout Guyana, and this is primarily his responsibility. In accordance with his appointment, he has a responsibility to protect every citizen, our community, our society. And what we have seen is we've seen, Mark, Guyana has moved from 5 years of relative peace during our tenure to months and months of wanton insecurity, lawlessness. We've seen crime spiraled out of control. And like I've just said earlier, there's no plan by the government. I think the minister has been very unresponsive. I've written to him, Mark, and there's not been even an acknowledgement. So I find he's been very unresponsive. He's been very uncaring, and he's been very impassive. And he hasn't dealt with the fears that are currently existing. And I've written to him also in relation to the conduct of some officers. You'll know some time back, social media was abuzz with complaints against the conduct of members of the Guyana Police Force in the execution of duties. We've received so many complaints at the office. There were complaints of harassment, victimization, unreasonable excessive behavior, and the force attitude and behavior was simply unbecoming. I wrote to the Commissioner of Police in relation to this. So, Mark, what we've seen is a spate, a pattern of threat to public security in the failure of, in the failure to staunch the spate of criminal violence, banditry, extrajudicial killing, murder, narco trafficking, and so many other corrupt practices that are within the public domain. We've said this publicly. I've said this in my presentations to Parliament. We've seen the brutal execution of young, precious human resources. We've seen arbitrary arrest and detention of public officers, politically motivated charges against my colleagues, the arrest and the profiling of certain Guyanese. And I feel, Mark, that the force has reached its lowest ebb. And there are stats out there, but I don't feel, Mark, that those stats that are in the public domain is a true representation of what is happening in this country. We get reports on a daily basis, and there is clearly an unprecedented upsurge in crime. We've seen the rise of untouchable drug gangs and operatives. We've seen the largest drug bust in our history, and the gruesome murder of citizens, and the complete lack of interest in solving these crimes.
You know, a lot of those crimes indeed have been unsolved. Mr. Robeson Ben certainly is uttering from some other part of his head and not necessarily his brain. Doesn't know what he's talking about. Has thus far within a year, a little over a year, has been the worst, in my opinion, the worst Minister of Home Affairs. In fact, Clement Rohi did better, and Clement Rohi was bad, worse. But here is Robeson Ben. Let me ask you this on this recent killing of Orrin Boston, who was shot and killed. He was murdered in his bed in front of his wife by members of the SWAT team. As a magistrate, as a lawyer, and now Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, how does it make you feel when police operating in this manner?
Mark, this is a very disturbing situation here. We, the opposition members, we have noted with extreme concerns the killing of Mr. Orrin Boston at the hands of the members of the SWAT unit. And we have made public our calls for an independent, an emphasis on the word independent, review of this very unfortunate event. There are reports which has suggested that there was an altercation between. However, we've listened to statements made by the wife, which has contradicted that version. And she's clearly said that her husband was asleep and the ranks Mark stormed into and they delivered that fatal blow. Her version suggests that there has been no resistance, there was no resistance on his part. And this sort of development, Mark, it reminds us of what happened in the past. It's clearly a frightening resemblance of a time in our country when these executions were the order of the day. And like I've said, crime, and there's clearly a need for an independent and thorough investigation. We need to know what happened on that fateful morning.
We need answers, and a lot of people have been calling for answers. The family members need answers. Outside of that, they need justice as well. Just like the family of this guy. There's still Mr. Headley, Peter Headley, killed months ago by a member of the Guyana Police Force. still no justice. The matter is still at the office of the Police Complaints Authority, headed by former Justice Ramlal. Do you think it is fair that family members have to wait this long, months, before a matter is reviewed? All right, we probably have a little technical or internet problem with our guest, the Honorable Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, Geeta Chandan. Ms. Geeta Chandan is a lawyer. She's also former magistrate, and you heard her. A couple of us appeared in front of her, and the intention was quite clear for her. The political bosses of the day just wanted her to do what they had other magistrates and judges doing, which was their political bidding to jail individuals, whether they were evidence or not. And I'm glad that over the years that Ms. Geeta Chandan-Edmond stood her ground and she remained as independent as possible. That cost her being removed from the bench. So she was kicked out sometime in February of 2015, just like Chief Magistrate Juliet Holder Allen and scores of other magistrates who were removed from the bench because they refused to do the biddings of the PPP. I know of one magistrate, Miss Allert, not the Chief Magistrate Juliet Holder Allert, but another magistrate, Miss Holder Allert. She also was advised when she was stationed as a magistrate. She was on the bench at one of those. She was in Georgetown as well, and she was ordered to find something to send yours truly to jail. So she admitted that. She said that publicly. But here it is. Getting back to our guest, we lost you for a minute. Good to have you back again.
My internet is a bit erratic. My apologies.
Yeah, that's okay. Your internet is behaving like Ropes and Ben and other members of the regime. I was asking you whether it's fair for family members to wait, having to wait months to even, in this case, this young man was murdered months ago by a member of the Guyana Police Force. Still, we're hearing that the file is at the Office of the Police Complaints Authority, which is headed by former Judge Mr. Ramlal, William Ramlal. Do you think this is fair that family members have to wait months?
It's not fair, Mark. I wouldn't say it's ever fair for any family to go through what Mr. Headley family has gone through, or what they are going through, or what Mr. Boston's family is going through. In relation to Mr. Headley's matter, I've tabled question in relation to this. I've asked very specific, very direct questions, and Minister in Parliament has responded by saying that this matter is before the OPR. And like I've said before, I am law-based. So I will await the findings, the report from OPR before my next step. This is a matter I feel very passionate about. I strongly feel from what is before me that the force has used, they've clearly used excessive force. And this is one matter that I will be pursuing in addition to Aaron Boston's matter. And as you're probably aware, I tabled a motion in relation to the killings of Harish Singh and the Henry boys. This matter is still on the order paper, but it hasn't been debated as yet because the matter is sub judice, which means that the matter is pending before the court.
Of course, sub judice, it's pending before the court. Oftentimes, lawyers like yourself and half-baked Camp Street lawyer like myself, we oftentimes find a way to skirt around the issue, even though it's sub judice. We are getting reports. We're getting reports that 2 suspects were shot and killed moments ago by members of the Guyana Police Force, and those individuals who were, according to the report, were shot and killed. They were suspects in the death of this the recent killing of an electrician out there, and I was going to get to that execution, that murder.
That's Joshua Denny you're speaking about.
Yes, here it is that there's a report that murder of the electrician, 2 suspects shot dead. Moments ago, 2 suspects shot dead by members of the Guyana police force. And if you can, Honorable MP, as I get to that story, as our assistant producer put that story up for us, Lemon, who's is all excited about his promotion. We're hearing here that the Guyana police force has confirmed the shooting death of 2 suspects involved in the murder of 19-year-old Joshua Denny. Police said the 2 suspects were shot during a stakeout by police at the UG Access Road, East Coast, Demerara, at about 18 hours today. That is about 6 o'clock today. The police did not provide further details on the incident. Again, the police did not provide further details on the incident, the shooting to death of these 2 suspects. According to the police, a witness said he heard 2 loud explosions, suspected to be, okay, this was the shooting to death of Mr. Denny. But here it is, we are hearing that the 2 suspects have been shot to death. We're not hearing that there was an exchange of gunfire. There was a fire between the 2, but all we're hearing is that there's no further. As a lawyer, as a former magistrate, do you see any question marks there, any red flags? Because the police
certainly.
Sorry, go ahead.
Certainly, I wasn't privy to the report. I was now listening to it as you were reading. So I wouldn't want to make any sort of premature pronouncements on what you just read to me. But what I would say to you and your listeners is that Joshua Denny's death is a painful reminder of what exists in this country. It's a stark reminder of a decline in public security. My colleagues and I, we do intend to visit the family of Joshua Denny, and we intend to pursue this matter. We intend to demand justice for Joshua, and his murder is another blatant act that represents this troubling period that we are in, and his death has to squarely rest at the feet of the government and the Minister of Home Affairs. Like I've said to you earlier, it is the responsibility of this government to protect its population.
Of course, it is the responsibility of the government indeed. I have seen some comments saying that if those suspects are indeed the ones who were responsible for the death of that young man, that young electrician, Mr. Denny, then they're saying kudos to the police. As a human rights activist, I should say that suspects are not necessarily guilty culprits or guilty individuals. They're just suspects. And how the police have been operating over the years, it still leaves a lot to be desired when they say suspects. Sometimes people are wanted for just questioning. If we are to see the police approach suspects in the government, those who are suspects of crimes, who are part of the higher echelons of the PPP, if the police had taken that sort of brutal measures against them, I don't know. But,
the police force has to be commended when they are professional in their actions and when they're just, they're fair and they're transparent. I mean, and when they're incompetent, they have to be called out for their incompetence. So if it is a case where they have genuinely dealt with this matter in the manner in which it deserves, kudos to them.
All right, and I am going to say that if in fact that the police were confronted, they were shot at by these 2 suspects, then it is fair play. If they want to shoot at police, then the police have every right to defend themselves.
Certainly. The police, they're empowered to use reasonable force. It's when they use excessive, unreasonable, and unjustified force, that's when their behavior and their conduct comes into question.
Precisely. However, getting back to the report, the police statement, It doesn't indicate that there was a gunfire, an exchange of gunfire with these individuals. And that to me is sufficient to put up some red flags. We don't know whether these two suspects were indeed involved in the shooting death of that young man. And they ought to be treated as suspects. I don't know. But I see some people are saying kudos to the Guyana Police Force. They are entitled to their opinions, of course. But as a human rights activist, I have a different view that not all suspects are guilty of a crime. In this situation, I don't know whether there are indeed persons who committed that brutal act of murder. I don't know.
Let's await the official report, and then we can make pronouncements.
Absolutely. But with what's happening in our country right now, we just saw these two persons shot to death, these two suspects.
Like I said, Marcus, we have a culture of distrust and mistrust, and it's because of everything that has been manifesting itself. So the distrust, I mean, there are cases where it's rightly justified.
Yeah. And do you think that the current regime, they're the ones who are responsible right now for the mistrust? Because as you mentioned earlier, during the case of the 5 years of the coalition, people started to regain trust in the Guyana Police Force. It seems as though all of that have gone through the door right
Certainly.
now. Do you think that is causing much distrust?
Certainly. The manner in which the government goes about their business, the way in which they govern, I think it has created a lot of skepticism in the hearts of the citizens.
Lots and lots of distrust. We know that some of them obviously are watching this show. They're not concerned about this distrust. They're not concerned about the image of the Guyana Police Force right now. Some of these senior operatives in the Guyana Police Force are behaving like politicians. They're taking orders and so forth from corrupt politicians. Some of them are even working for drug lords and so forth. Only this morning, or I think yesterday, I'm sure, Madam MP, you read this case where at a police roadblock, a deputy superintendent of police, Mr. Brung, was caught allegedly with ganja and a firearm, illegal firearm. Again, how does this make you feel that a senior member of the Guyana Police Force has been caught allegedly in the act? All right, internet problem again with the Honorable Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, former magistrate, that is, and she is the Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, Ms. Geeta Chandan-Edmond. Let us hope we get her back as quickly as possible. Lemon is on the case, and let us see what happens next, because we still have a couple of minutes more with the Honorable Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, the Member of Parliament for the APNU AFC coalition government, coalition in the opposition. Here's a photograph. This is what they built for $50+ million. It was a shabby job, and so shabby that I believe this is what happened. That the Brickdam Police Station rehab, new lockups. It's the new lockups. You just saw it there. And this was an article back in 2019, November, where it says here, the Ministry of Public Security recently published an invitation for bids for the rehabilitation of the Brickdam Police Station. Bids were placed earlier in July of the said year. Here it is. I thought our new assistant producer would have put those figures up there for you guys to see, that the PPP spent $50 million just for this and other cells in terms of putting concrete and so forth. $50 million. Then when the coalition got into office, they found out that this was shabby work. And so what the coalition did, they were forced, they had to redo a lot of these work. What they were forced to do was to spend another 20 million of your taxpayers' dollars just for the Brickdam lockups. And I said, like I've said earlier, I'm familiar with those beds. They had no mattress, they had nothing on them. And I don't know how Freddie Kissoon made out in terms of sleeping. That potty or whatever you call it there, it didn't work. It was clogged up. It was lots and lots of stuff were there, and Freddie Kissoon didn't do much justice in terms of the substance that were in there. Now that we have the former magistrate and shadow minister of Home Affairs back with us, we still have a few more minutes. Again, the Brickdam Police Station completely gutted. I know I asked you this question, but should persons who have matters before the case, should they be kissing those cases goodbye or what? If you can, we're not hearing you. All right, we give the honorable member of parliament an opportunity so that she can unmute her mic and we get to hear her about that. There
Okay.
you go.
Okay, good. Thanks to my daughter.
Oh.
Yes, I don't think anyone should be excited with what has happened, Mark, especially those persons who have matters before the court. And like I've said earlier, albeit that the minister has made an outlandish statement in relation to reconstruction, there are legal methods, legal avenues in which statements can be reconstructed. But in terms of evidence, that's going to pose a legal challenge. And the prosecutors certainly have a challenging time ahead.
Challenging time ahead indeed. The Honorable Shadow Minister of Home Affairs, it's always a pleasure to see you, always a pleasure to have you on the show. This is your second appearance. Please do not be a stranger at all. If you have to be on with us every week.
Mark, certainly. Once you invite me on, I'll certainly be on your program.
Yep.
This time, it's perfect for me in terms of my work and my personal commitments.
And we thank you so much. I know a family member of yours was a little under the weather. I'm glad that person has, is home comfortably resting. Speedy recovery to that individual.
Thank you so much.
Let me give you this opportunity for your closing remarks in the event that I missed asking a particular question that you wanted our listeners to hear about. Go right ahead, please.
Mark, knowing the kind of person you are, if you wanted to ask me something very specific, you would have asked me. But what I will leave with your viewers is to get yourself vaccinated, protect yourself. I know what has happened today. There's a lot of skepticism, but protect yourselves. And I will be back on. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them. And I continue to call for the resignation of Robson Ben. There is a no confidence motion against him. And I strongly believe that that motion is justly and rightly before the House. And the public, they have expressed their opinion already. And in the public courts, the public opinion, they have lost every confidence in him. And we have seen his incompetence manifested in a series of events, which I've chronicled some of it today and some already in some of my public statements.
Well said. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday schedule with your family. I know as a member of parliament, as a representative of the people, it comes with the territory of being out there and standing up and representing. I know crime is on the increase, a lot of heinous crimes around, shooting to death by police, execution style killings, extrajudicial killings by so-called members of a SWAT team. You will be very, very busy as a Shadow Minister of Home Affairs with a lot of press.
On that note, Mark, sorry to
Sure, that's okay.
I know there's another misconception that the opposition members are not working, but I speak on myself on behalf of all of my colleagues in the opposition. We've been working. We've been working, Mark, albeit with all the challenges, the limited resources. We have been working as a collective unit to represent our constituency, and not only our constituency, to represent all of Guyana, and we will continue to do so. You will continue to see robust intervention from all of us.
Thank you so much for that clarification. You guys have been working. I'm glad that you have reminded our listeners. In fact, they want to see more of you guys. And I guess that's the issue with the people. It's not to say that some of you or all of you have been working, but they want to see more of you guys. Thank you so much, though, for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mark. Have a good night.
Sure. We'll take a quick break, and then we will be back with the conclusion of Straight Up, a special program. Since the Honorable MP said that they are working, all of them are working. I want to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. I'll play this for all of the hardworking opposition members of Parliament. Well, certainly not that, but you guys are going to love this. There we go. Well, I don't know what Lemon is up to, but they're all working. They're working. And I know that there are a lot of them who are indeed working. Like I've said to the Honorable Shadow Minister, that people want to see more of them, not just occasionally, but more of them. And so I'm pleased. We here at 107.1 FM, we are pleased that the Honorable Member of Parliament took time out of her weekend schedule to be here with us to address some of the issues and answer some questions. More importantly is the fire at the Brickdam Police Station. There is no more Brickdam Police Station, none whatsoever. It's done with. It is gone. And now let me say this to you guys. We haven't heard from there's no official, or there hasn't been, at least it's 6 minutes after 8 o'clock. I don't know if they have had one. But in any other part of the world, developed world that is, there would have been a press conference. Now, there's a difference with being on the scene and reporters asking some questions. There's a difference with a press conference. At press conferences, they're usually thorough, based on maybe 2 or 3 or 4 hours they would have had to call a press conference to talk to members of the media who, by extension, they talk to you, members of the general public. There has been no such press conference or a joint press conference between the Guyana Police Force and the Guyana Fire Service. The head of the Guyana Fire Service, Mr. Edo, some people pronounce it as Edo. Well, he was at the scene there today, and I must thank God that the fire chief did not faint. He is in the habit of fainting whenever he goes to these fire around the country. Now, there's a situation with Mr. Nigel Hughes and the fire hydrant. Mr. Hughes and others of Hughes Stobie, his law firm, they were saying to the police, the fire folks, that the fire hydrant works. The firefighters were saying, no, it doesn't work. It has a blue marking on it. But yet the residents in the area, working Rust and other areas there, they were saying it worked. And so it works. And so they went and they got their tools and they loosened whatever they had to. And lo and behold, it worked. It just shows the sort of firefighters we have. I'm not saying that all of them are like that. But the ones who made that decision said that it doesn't work. I don't know. I just don't know. The fire chief needs to answer some questions, and he needs to release those the promotion list that he has that he has been suppressing for a while. Maybe competent officers who know their job can be promoted, and firefighters will be in a position to be guided and led by competent individuals in the Guyana Fire Service. But so far, there hasn't been any press conference by the fire chief, no joint press conference by the fire chief and the Commissioner of Police acting, none whatsoever. I don't know if they're waiting for political orders from another incompetent individual, that is Robeson Ben, who is waiting for orders from some other incompetent folks within the regime. But Brickdam lockups is no more. Memories, indeed. Memories upon memories. My second home, away from home, every other week, every other day, right there. Right there. It is no more. On this day, Lincoln Lewis, Norris Witter, the red T-shirt, then our lawyer, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, he came, he visited us a couple of times. The police placed us on bail. We refused to accept the bail, and we remain in prison in the lockups there for another 2 days. In fact, even after they gave us bail, we said, that's it. We don't want to be placed on bail. So I do believe a slight correction that they placed us on bail and we refused to be released. And so until we were placed on our own recognizance. So from there, we headed straight to the magistrate's court. Straight to the magistrate's court. Whilst we were in the Brickdam lockups, Norris Witter, the gentleman in the red T-shirt, let me give you guys a brief description. As soon as we were dumped in the lockups, Norris Witter grabbed himself a cardboard box. I'm sorry, this is not any laughing, but he grabbed him. We always joke about this, Lincoln Lewis and I and Norris. Norris grabbed himself a cardboard box and slept for 3 days and 3 nights right there on that cardboard box. Lincoln Lewis and I, we were preaching. Lincoln was talking trade unions and rights and all these things, and I was talking to the other colleagues in the Brickdam lockups. We were talking about rights and how to confront an illegitimate regime and all these different things. So we hardly slept, right? And so in that Brickdam lockups, it was horrible. Human rights violations upon human rights violations, right? So for me to see that it is gone, for me, I don't know. I don't want to jump up and clap, but that place was a horrible place. That place was a human rights violation for many, many folks. Folks were tortured in there. And this is how they fed us in the Brickdam lockups. They fed us with a big black bucket. And in that black bucket, they threw porridge inside. And all of us had to go, those who had a cup or whatever, to just dip from that bucket and drink. Dip from that bucket and drink. Then when that porridge was finished with, guess what? We had to bathe from that bucket. We had to fill water in the bucket and bathe right from that bucket. We had to bathe. And when we finished bathing, those who would have had to do whatever it is in the bathroom, toilet, the toilet wasn't working. So we had to take that same black bucket and flush the toilet. And so when we were done doing all those things, guess what? The bucket had to come back out for food. So that was that famous black bucket. The Brickdam lockups, lots and lots of tears on that lockups. People died in there. People died in there. People were tortured in there. It was overcrowded. At every to me, one election's time, they picked us up and they had over 150 of us. in that Brickdam lockups that basically was built for about maybe 10 or 15. They had over 150 of us. When Freddie Kissoon and I were in there, we spent another 3 nights. They always do that to us. Well, for me, I spent lots of 3 nights in the lockups, mostly at Brickdam lockups, but even throughout the country. But we're talking specifically about Brickdam lockups. Freddie himself saw these sort of things and the treatment there. I don't see him writing often about that, but that was a sad situation. Freddie made a vow that he is done. He's no longer going to champion the rights of people. He basically gave up. He couldn't take the condition, the smell, the condition. There was no mattress. There was no proper running water. I'm not even sure that usually you go in there and you don't want to bathe, because I could understand Freddie's reluctance in even wanting to strip naked in front of the other prisoners to bathe. Trust me, I can understand his reluctance. And so it was horrible. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise. I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying here. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise to see the back of the Brickdam police lockups. It was horrible, gross human rights violations. And I say all of these things, it's not a mockery. It is a fact, a matter of fact. Lincoln Lewis can attest to these things, Norris Witter, Freddie Kissoon, and scores of other persons. Some of you may be watching would have experienced in that lockups as well. It wasn't easy. So all I have to say is goodbye to that lockup. Goodbye to that lockups, but not necessarily goodbye to the police station. I don't want anybody to say that Ben Sharp is laughing because the station is burnt down. No, I'm not laughing, because in any country we need police stations. We need the police officers to protect and serve. But again, the Brickdam Police Station, the police officers and so forth, some of them have done some really, really bad things to people. And so people's tears and all these things, there are scores of people who may be laughing out there and who may be happy that that has happened. I'm not necessarily going to take that route to laugh and think that it's funny that it has been burnt down. The main question is how. And again, a lot of bad things happen in that police station, and more so in the police station lockups. It reminds me, over 20 years ago, there was a first case that I worked on, human rights violations case. There was a guy by the name of Bacchus, I believe. Bacchus, or maybe it was Khan, sorry. The police apparently killed him in the Brickdam lockups, and they claimed that he took his own life. We didn't believe much of that. And so the family members and I were running around Georgetown protesting. So there are lots and lots of horrible memories of the Brickdam lockups. Horrible memories. Goodbye to the Brickdam lockups. Goodbye. Those memories will still be with us who experienced those horrible days and nights in the Brickdam lockups. And goodbye to Brickdam Police Station. I don't know the circumstances under which it was burnt. The fire started, I don't know. But looking at some photographs, it appears that it started on the left side, which is the eastern side when you go in from Brickdam. And on that eastern side, you have the lockups. But I'm not saying it started in the lockups. If it started there in the lockups, it's all concrete, then probably persons would have died. But it appears that it started somewhere in the upper level on the left-hand side, the eastern side of the building. That's my opinion, mind you. It could have been deliberate. We don't know. It could have started from the CID section. We don't know. But what we do know is that there's no longer a Brickdam Police Station. Some people are already talking about that it may have been deliberately burnt. I don't know, and neither do I want to spread that sort of rumor as to how it was burnt, how the fire started. I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to do that at all. We are hearing this sort of people saying that it was deliberately burnt because there are some people who want that area for prime real estate spot. And as you know, not so long ago, Minister Robeson Ben said that they want to move the fire station to Homestretch Avenue, right? So if they want to move the fire station to Homestretch Avenue, read between the lines. Are we going to hear that Brickdam Police Station will be rebuilt on Homestretch Avenue? If that happens, then somebody is lucky to have a prime real estate land right there at Brickdam Police Station spot. Are we, again, my question, are we going to hear that the police station, the Brickdam Police Station, will be rebuilt on Homestretch Avenue? You never know. But for now, my name is Mark Benshop. At 20 minutes after 8 o'clock, I've got to go. I got to continue praying for our country. It's in a bad state, a horrible state. Oh, gosh. Thanks so much to the Honorable Shadow Minister Geeta Chandan-Edmond for gracing us with her presence this evening. Please do pray for the country. So long.
It's hard to be at peace with the ones who are so discard. It's hard. Them have a knife in your back and them smile it so broad. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. I never want to take your glory, Lord. Send your angels to encamp around about me and stand guard. To envy is so easy and to love it is so hard. Let me work for your glory and not for the award. Don't make me ever get caught up in the scream and the applause. And go talk about the blessing and not talk about the Lord. All these things are vanity. I need your reward. Let me be real. Don't put on no facade. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. Sticks and stones can break my bones and words can harm me. They can harm me. When the evil come against me, you'll protect me. You'll protect me. Father, I need the strength of your son. Cause you know my work is not done. Lord, I need that endurance just to finish this race that I run. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. And help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. You tell me if you stand firm. Cause every little plan you have a confirm. I know them evil plan turn. In a darkness me a the lantern. So help me to deal with the ones that who said them love me when them really don't. Jesus, help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Cause the booby traps with them set is real. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them